guest. His name is Jerome Hudson, and he is with Breitbart News. He hails from Jacksonville, Florida. So let me tell you a little bit about Jerome, and then I'm going to invite him into our conversation. Jerome is the entertainment editor with Breitbart News, but prior to working for Breitbart, he worked at the Government Accountability Institute with author, investigative journalist, and political commentator Peter Schweitzer. There, Hudson was heavily involved in uncovering government corruption. Now, in 2013, he began writing for Breitbart, where today Jerome Hudson is the entertainment editor, specializing in showing the vast disconnect between Hollywood and the everyday American. His team was written up in the New York Times for its effectiveness. He looks for incongruities and full-blown hypocrisy between what celebrities say and what they do. Jerome Hudson's most recent book, 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know About Trump, chronicles what the establishment media withheld from the public about President Trump's first term, his accomplishments. Hudson's first book, 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know, is the Publishers Weekly and USA Today bestseller that the New York Times refused to include on its book rankings, thus making Jerome Hudson's point that the book is full of facts and analysis the establishment press do not want you to know. It reached number 5 on Amazon.com. He is a member of the Project 21 Black Leadership Network, serving on the organization's National Advisory Council. He participated in Candace Owens' 2019 premiere Blexit event, where he gave a rousing speech. Now, let's meet Jerome Hudson. Here we go. Jerome Hudson, welcome to the Adrienne Ross Show. I appreciate you taking your time.
It's long overdue.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you were on a show I was doing with me 8 years ago. I cannot believe it's been 8 years, but I was doing Blog Talk Radio.
Right.
A little while. I don't even know if that still exists, but it was like everyone was doing Blog Talk Radio. And I had a show, and it was approaching the 30th anniversary of Martin Luther King Day, becoming a holiday. And you and I talked for a while, similar maybe to what we're going to be talking about today. But then we wanted to sort of assess, okay, this is 30 years later. We obviously all know that Dr. King had a dream. Where are we in terms of accomplishing that dream? That was our conversation then.
Right.
What I want to talk about today is a narrower focus, really. And I want to look into race relations within conservatism, within, I guess I would say, the Republican Party, although I don't identify as a Republican, I identify as a conservative. But there's some stuff going on. I don't know how entrenched you are in it, but there is some stuff going on in conservatism that has me somewhat concerned.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I thought about you, and I wanted to have this conversation with you. I think you should be able to offer some insight. So I've spent the past 2 weeks dealing with some of this. I did an episode called Dear White Conservatives with a Platform.
Yeah.
And I jumped into some stuff with Charlie Kirk, with Matt Walsh, and that got me some interesting response on YouTube. Some positive, some people wanting to put me in my place, I guess. And then after last episode, I spoke with the 2 co-founders of ACONS, African American Conservatives.
Yeah.
And we jumped into some stuff. And then I was on their show, which I guess should be coming out soon. But let's talk a little bit about your background, first of all.
Sure.
How do you identify yourself? You heard me say I don't identify as a Republican necessarily. How do you identify yourself? Were you always politically involved? And if not, how did this come to be?
No, born and raised in Savannah, 2 lovely parents. My father was in the Army, retired. My mom went to night school to get her high school diploma. They're both from Miami.
Mhm.
And we didn't really talk about politics in the house. And, we were missionary Baptists,
Mhm.
church every Sunday. I tried to avoid it, but Bible study most Wednesdays. And, Denzel Washington walked
Mhm.
on water.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I had a great middle class upbringing in Savannah, Georgia. And, I graduated high school in 2004, moved to Tallahassee, marched in the Marching 100 at FAMU for a few years, and sort of matriculated through college, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life professionally.
Mhm.
And I went to Bainbridge, Georgia, and I took a speech communications class taught by our colleague, Winton Hall. And he sort of became, professor, then mentor. And that was the moment for me that my philosophical light switch flipped. And it was Winton sort of turning me on to Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman and, Angela McGowan. She's not very politically active, but her book Bamboozled,
Yes.
the hidden history of the Democratic Party,
Mhm.
was kind of life changing for me. I from Winton's been involved with Young America's Foundation for years, and I went to my first YAF conference in the fall of 2009. That, Adrian, for me was the first time that I sort of had this philosophical awakening. You're born black, you're born a Democrat, and
Right.
again, like, I mean, it was just like Jesus first, second, and third in my household. It really wasn't about politics, but from I would say the time I got to my college campus in 2004,
Mhm.
um it was pretty obvious, because this was around just after the election of Obama.
Mhm.
And it
Mm.
politics was very palpable, if you will, throughout culture. um and so by the time I went to my first YAF conference, I'm surrounded by hundreds of like-minded young individuals who happen to be conservative. I had already had an article published nationally. Glenn Beck put it on his website, "The Life of a Young Black Conservative," and that
Mm.
that gave me a lot of notoriety. I mean, I received like thousands of messages on Facebook from people that I'll never know and never meet, thanking me for sort of telling the truth about the race hustle that has existed in this country for decades. And I guess the rest is history. I in 2012, Peter Schweitzer founded his Government Accountability Institute. I was blessed to be one of the first researchers at GAI, which is still kicking ass.
Mm.
And I started writing my first. I went back years ago, and I was like, when was my first article published at Breitbart? It was February 2013. um I wrote something stupid, probably. I don't even remember what it was, but um no, I I had my dad was very strict. He was an army drill instructor, and so um his proverbial foot was always just an inch away from our behinds if we ever acted out. And so
Mm.
he inculcated, as did my mom, like the meaning of hard work and no excuses,
Mhm.
and second place not being good enough. Took karate for almost a decade.
Mm.
I was never a virtuoso saxophone player, but I worked hard because of the values that my parents instilled in me. And so when I got to campus and I realized that in order to be socially accepted, if you will, you better basically side with the left, the liberal agenda, the Democratic Party. And I was never really that big on conformity anyway.
Mhm.
um I kind of like going against the grain. And so conservatism, particularly when I learned the history of the Democratic Party around 2009, I was very turned off. And in fact, I mean, reading some of the true history of the Democratic Party, I never forget feeling robbed. I often tell this story when I speak to Young America's Foundation crowds, because these are young people. Generally, they've been turned on to politics way before I did when I
Yeah.
was their age. And I just remember being 21, had already gone through, K through 12, couple of years of college, and it was a professor at a school that I never even thought I'd go to giving me books with information that I'd never seen in 14 years of, pretty solid education in public school in Chatham County in Georgia. But um, you know, I think today, as a two-time published author, sometimes fill-in radio host on Breitbart's SiriusXM programs. I don't know. I've given like 100 speeches across the country. I've probably written thousands of ridiculous articles, and countless conversations. You know what I mean? I think most people just want to be left alone. They
Mm,
want to be able to run their business, build their business,
hmm.
raise their families, just
Right.
live life.
Hmm.
And that is antithetical to the leftist agenda in America. I mean,
Yeah.
the you talked about, our conversation almost a decade ago, and that mountaintop that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about. I think we've been closer to the top of that mountain
Hmm.
for longer than the left ever wants us to realize.
Right.
For a long time, most Americans have had way more in common than we don't.
Mhm.
I think you can look at census data dating back decades. The amount of interracial marriages and households, the exponential growth in that. I think in '92, Pew asked thousands of Americans in a survey, and like 92% of them said they would support a black president. I know
Right.
that's different from actually voting for one, but
Hmm.
it was like almost 20 years before Obama was the nominee.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I mean, once I realized that, that I'd been bamboozled, that this huge lie had been perpetrated not only on me, but on so many people like me,
Hmm.
15, 20 years ago. I didn't necessarily like dedicate my life,
Right.
um, you know, to conservatism. But certainly I just thought more people should know that
Right.
if there wasn't a Democratic Party, um, that much of this, the racism that is talked about and studied and debated,
Hmm.
and legislated wouldn't even exist in America,
Hmm.
very likely. And it's very easy to do that at Breitbart as an editor,
Hmm.
to speak actual truth to the left wing power base, which has monopolies in academia and media
Right.
and entertainment.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, let me ask you this though, because I want to know. I have some notes here, but they can go out the window because you can roll with me. So I want to know what makes you different in conservatism or in the Republican Party, however we want to refer, on the right.
yeah,
How are you're speaking, you're out there, you mentioned YAF, all
yeah,
that. What makes you different from a vast number of other Black men
yeah,
or Black women even,
sure,
so that you are in this place of embracing conservatism and the values
yeah,
thereof that many others are not? And we know that that's the case.
yeah. No, I mean, my my dad's mom had, um, like 12 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, like, the family's big, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there are a few of us who are openly, conservative. I mean, I'm kind of like you. Like, I'm registered Republican here in Duval County,
Mhm,
Florida.
mhm,
Um, but I just, I'll show up to the debates or I'll watch them on TV.
mhm,
I really pay attention to what people say, particularly if they don't really have a record of actually doing anything.
mhm,
Like, I don't really care about political parties because at the end of the day, like I said, I mean, it, people just want to be able to send their kid to the best school, regardless of where their zip code is.
mhm.
And that's not really like a political issue as in so much as it's just like I love my kid and I want my kid to have the best education possible. Um, but I personally, whenever Young America's Foundation calls, I will be on a stage or on a panel because the left, like I said, I mean, academia is it's a stranglehold. I mean, they've turned once great universities and college campuses into intellectual meat grinders. It's absolutely embarrassing when you have the heads of the most prestigious universities in the world, let alone the country, not being able to actually denounce pure evil and anti-Semitism. And so these young conservative student activists are up against the gun every day, the intimidation, the ostracization. So
Mhm.
I just show up and I tell them, be proud, believe in God, believe in yourself, rise up and speak the truth to these assholes. I mean,
Mm,
these people don't realize how good they have it in this country. And
right.
oftentimes, you know, you kind of you got to feel sorry for them because that social validation comes so easily when you just go along with the liberal agenda. But it's wrong, man. Like, people work hard for their money and they should keep as much of it as possible. It shouldn't go to or be confiscated by an IRS
Mhm,
that disproportionately audits Black Americans as opposed to their white
mm.
or Indian or Hispanic counterparts. The same IRS that routinely loses personal information, and yet they want to hire a million more auditors so they can do what?
Yeah.
Siphon our money to spend it on crazy ass monkey experiments. Anyway, so I show up for Young America's Foundation to advance the conservative cause on college campuses. I show up to friends. I spoke recently at the Charleston County. It wasn't the Charleston County Republican Party in South Carolina. It was like a group that was raising money to go to get out the vote efforts, day of voting, training, um, and like because that's important, right? Like the day of voting, calling out BS
Mhm.
and intimidation at polling, and so I know the people involved. I trust them. I trust that the money is going to go where they say that it's going to go for getting out the vote. And it's very easy to wake up in the morning and work at Breitbart. I often say I work among salt of the earth people, just incredibly talented and brilliant. And locally I'm involved. I try
But
not to. I try
how,
not to. Yeah, I try
no,
not
go
to
ahead.
be that involved with the local party, just because I I just ease my way in. I'll show up here, there, but I've been recruited before
Mhm,
for local office, and I
mhm.
I should not be sworn in
No,
to
I hear.
represent
Listen,
any.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
um,
What I hear what you're saying.
yeah,
I want to
I
know.
hope I answered your question.
I want to go into the nitty gritty of all of that, all
Yeah,
the values, all the principles, even all you're doing, work at Breitbart, all that. How does that impact, or maybe you don't think it's necessary?
yeah.
How does that impact, let's say, Black America
Hmm.
in terms of being open to what you
Yeah.
obviously feel like is worth being open to, meaning conservatism? as opposed to the Democrat Party. So where are we in terms of that? I am a member of Guardians of Liberty in Southeast Missouri, and I'm inviting you to come to a meeting. We meet every Tuesday at 5 p.m. at Delmonico's in Jackson. On February 20th, there will be a free showing of Let My People Go, a documentary by Professor David Clements. Free the J6 prisoners, end rigged elections. Let my people go. And on February 27th, the topic is Israel or Palestine. Usama Dakdak, a Muslim evangelism specialist, will be at the meeting. Delmonico's, 5 p.m. in Jackson. Are you still tied to Google and Safari? Have you not yet tried the Luxel search engine? You got to give it a try. Why? Because among other things, you get uncensored results, you get an unbiased search engine, and you even get to filter your options based on your political preferences. A lot of people I know are gravitating to Luxel. You need to check it out also. That's LUXXLE.com. Everyone wants to take their automobile somewhere they can trust. That's DL Transmissions. DL Transmissions was recently recognized and featured in the Transmission Digest magazine, a worldwide publication for transmission repair shops. You can check out their article at www.transmissiondigest.com. Then look under magazine archives and choose July 2023. DL Transmissions specializes in custom-built heavy-duty and high-performance applications, as well as remanufacturing and transmission repair. Call them at 573-334-8726.
No, I mean, when I show up on a YAF stage, I mean, I don't pull any punches. I mean, just a week ago, yesterday, I was in Orlando, about 400 conservative student activists. You know, I talked about the history of the Democratic Party, a history that the Democratic Party hides from its own national website. Go to their website, get past the whole donate to us crap, go to the about me, and then go to their history. Their history starts in 1920. That evil ass party was started in 1820. They're hiding 100 years of racial brutality and barbarism that, you know, I'd be embarrassed of too. And it's not just the history. It's the same party that has always literally stood in school doorways to keep Black kids out of. They're still doing it. There's no shortage of liberal Democrats standing in the way of school choice. And on and on and on. And so I stand on that stage, and to be honest with you, I mean, most of the faces that I look at, those beautiful young little activist conservative faces, they're not Black. A lot are, but most aren't. And I think that's important. I think that regardless of how you look, if you agree with the values of conservatism, then you should be able to openly speak to any community about those values.
Right.
You know, I show up at a fundraising meeting for a conservative organization. Oftentimes, most of the audience is white. You know, but there are other opportunities in which just here locally, you know, speaking with Black conservatives, Black Republicans. I think I like to have those conversations and to start those conversations locally, because a lot of politics truly is locally. Although the federal government, they've lost their whole damn minds. I see a lot of what, you know, other conservatives, Black and white, who have large platforms do. But I mean, my approach is it's past time to get past the BS. I mean, the left would like us, the Democratic Party would like us to continue to debate the largely time-wasting and energy-wasting argument over racism in America. Problems that do plague Black Americans don't have anything to do with racism, not at this point, because if we had more fathers, not just in the home, but contributing financially, raising up the values spiritually in the home, a lot of those problems would be solved. And you can say the same thing about any racial demographic
Mhm.
as well. But yeah, I,
Well,
I, I'd like to say I'm making at least a small positive
yeah.
impact in that way.
Well, one of the things that I want to get into is the issue of race and the division that I'm seeing now within the Republican Party.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I took on a couple weeks ago or so was uh, uh, Charlie Kirk's um, war on Martin Luther King.
Sure.
So he feels that it's his place, I guess. It was his place for
Yeah.
Martin Luther King holiday to really denigrate Dr. King because somehow he
Sure.
thinks that whatever he shares about Dr. King's past is going to be effective.
Sure.
And it's the, it's the truth that he knows, and so he wants to share that. Matt Walsh came along as well, but Matt Walsh, his mindset seemed to be that of revenge. His tweet was about, you guys come after our statutes, you come at our statues, you come after our heroes.
Yeah.
And so, basically what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so we're going to play by the same rules. So now we're going to come after him.
Yeah.
So that has created some tension. And then came along Black History Month. And as usual, you have voices coming out, coming out against Black History Month. And I've had as I was a teacher for nearly 20 years,
Yeah.
I've gone through the roller coaster of that whole thing.
Sure.
Okay. I've gone through the roller coaster of Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
etc. These are people with the platform who say they want the Republican Party to be a wide tent.
Sure.
And yet I'm hearing a lot now of, okay, let's take down Martin Luther King. Um, you get your Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire who's saying things, he starts a monologue with Black History Month means nothing to anybody.
Hmm.
And
It's
and then
very Morgan Freeman of him.
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, Morgan Freeman, of course, they like to pull out the Morgan Freeman quote and all that, but it's been a very very obvious anti Martin Luther King, anti Black History Month, and then of course the Super Bowl came, and I'll get to that in a moment with, lift every voice and sing. So I want to ask you, where do you stand? I already said we spoke at length about Martin Luther King before.
Yeah.
But I want to know where you stand with Martin Luther King Day, where
Yeah.
you stand with Black History Month, and what you would say to conservatives who somehow feel that it is their purpose in life to kind of eradicate these things because according to them we should be colorblind, or that we should embrace the truth as in what Martin Luther King stood for, they say.
Yeah. I don't really want to imagine an America in where, well, first of all, Daddy King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s father existed, or one where his son, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. existed. Because, I mean, again, like, you know, the Democrats fought a war so they could hold on to their slaves. Thankfully, they lost that war. But it didn't stop there. I mean, they spent the next 100 plus years trying to keep people who look like us on a virtual plantation.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Carter G. Woodson and starting Black History Week. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like many things, almost 100 years ago, people wanted to have recognition and pride, like in the things that happened that involved the accomplishments, whether they were educationally, advancements, economics, business, inventions, that people who happen to be Black contributed to the fabric of this country. While it was still relatively young, and had fought a great war to solve an egregious indignity. And it was always prideful. I know you've alluded to it twice, but the hymnal that is "Lift Every Voice," I mean, written in honor of a great president, and it wasn't. There was just no wokeness.
Right.
And this is my point. Like, I've seen the Charlie Kirk stuff, not really the Michael Knowles, and to a lesser degree the Matt Walsh stuff. Like the discourse in this country politically is just so dumbed down. So much of it is so asinine. Um, we spend so much time having the wrong conversations at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when the overwhelming majority of our energy should be in kicking Democrats out of office, it is sad to see that some people are training their fire on, true heroes of human rights and civil rights. Reverend Dr.
Martin
Martin
Luther King being one of those.
was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. perfect? No, but neither of the people criticizing him today are. I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah.
um, it is about, by and large, what these individuals were able to do and why they did it, and the absolute racial barbarism that they did it through. I can't really criticize, you know, the people. I mean, they have legacies,
Yeah.
you know, but look, I haven't, like I said, I haven't listened to all the rants, but I just rather focus on fixing the historic lies and the evil spells that the left has cast on people. Like, if you're gonna rant about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that's fine, but also mention the fact that if it were not for him heading up the civil rights movement, then that virulent racist and Lyndon Johnson wouldn't have even signed the 64 and 65 Civil Rights Acts into law. Like, I mean, like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
uh, I
I'll
don't know.
tell you now, I mean, I'm not a big Twitter X person,
Yeah,
but I have gone and there's an ongoing. There are people, there were some
it's a
positive.
whole universe. It's an entire
It,
ecosystem in which people establish identities, build platforms, and so much of it is performative. Like, what in the hell are you doing really to advance the cause for freedom? I mean, a lot of
right.
it,
Well,
some of it is beneficial. I mean, you got to be out there, people see you,
right,
people get
right.
turned on to new ideas and arguments, but
Yeah. Well, there's some some voices like Sonny Johnson, and Dr. Pastor
yeah,
Daryl Scott,
yeah,
who I guess was a Trump advisor, is
yeah,
Trump has called him his own pastor. I believe he's a part of Black Voices for Trump. And he is constantly, several times a day, going at Charlie Kirk, going at him. And I guess my struggle.
they're all going to vote for the same Donald Trump in about
Well,
7 months.
okay, but here's the thing that some people are saying,
What are we doing?
some Black people on the right are saying.
Yeah,
The tactics of people who are denigrating Dr. King, or just out of nowhere coming out with a tweet, there should be no Black History Month, and Black History Month doesn't mean anything, and all my Black friends think it's stupid, and all these things that I'm hearing. There are people, and I'm one of them, who wonders, will this impact the Black vote for Trump? Because people do believe that, and I've heard some comments from Black people who
yeah,
are looking in that direction, whereas they would not have looked before.
sure.
And are they
Yeah.
shooting themselves in the foot? Because if I hear you say, "Oh, Dr. King is horrible. Oh, Black History Month is stupid. Oh, I mean, everybody's a DEI hire. Everybody I don't agree with was a DEI hire. And I'm like, I know DEI is controversial. I believe in merit as well. But not every Black person who did something wrong is a DEI hire. But you
Therein
hear
lies
this.
the rub.
So my question to you is,
Yeah.
what's the message? I mean, I think conservatives have a great message, but their messaging is horrible.
No, and I think in this case, when it comes to, your question, does this have the potential to negatively impact Black people supporting Donald Trump? I think that Donald Trump, because he has his own gravity,
Mm-hmm.
he is so massive. He is, in many ways, at least to me, confounding in the sense that I I I don't know really if there's, at least, I mean, there'd have to be just a handful of American political figures who've wanted to build this country for the better more than he has, while taking as many slings and arrows as he has. I just, people often say, well, he doesn't have to do it. He does it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
yet the man continues to fight. And I do think that that in of itself has become, in the last several months, with, you know, between Letitia James in New York, Alvin Bragg also in New York, Bonnie Willis in Georgia, Jack Smith. I mean, the left, Adrienne, build and constructed this amazing conversation around where Black people have always fit into the justice system, and the answer being it's by and large historically been unfair for us. And I think in the mind of also a lot of those Black people who would agree with that sentiment, see Donald Trump and remember his presidency being beneficial to them time and time again. The Black white wealth gap shrinking for the first time in 30 years. I think it's chapter 17 in my book, 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know About Trump. In 2018 and 19, Black women representing the largest share of new business owners 2 years in a row. Donald Trump packing the Oval Office with 100 Black presidents and provosts of universities and historically Black colleges to sign a 10-year funding package had never been done, even though his predecessor was a Black president. I think Black people remember the good times economically, especially that they had under Trump, see him being attacked, and see him now like beating Biden in every swing state, and it almost becoming a fait accompli that Donald Trump will be sworn in president again. I think that largely exists way beyond the sometimes awfully ridiculous conversations that otherwise would probably bleed into and negatively affect any other candidate. I just think that Donald Trump is just his it's just he's just an entity that I think just kind
Yeah.
of blows
Well,
past that. Now, what's happening over here, the criticizing of Black History Month, Martin Luther King Jr., the ankle biting of white conservatives with large platforms fighting publicly or
right.
on social media with other Black confidants of Trump, that doesn't help.
No.
And you don't really see that sort of um, uh, uh, lack of unity, if you will, on the left. It's
No,
like
you don't. Right.
we
Yeah.
we don't have monopolies in big tech. We don't have a monopoly in the media. We don't have a monopoly in academia or in entertainment. The left does. And the left also seemingly has more billionaires who will spend more money to pump their destructive message,
Mhm.
and to fund campaigns of people who will ultimately try to just expand power of the Democratic Party. So the last thing we need, people, is to actually be training our guns on each other. Like every single one of these elections is the most important election. So I don't know, like kumbaya, like this shit is real. Like people are losing their livelihoods, like defaulting on credit card and loan payments. You can't rent a house. They're letting in God only knows who by the month into this country. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, I mean, settle these scores. Like, don't they can you can DM, right? Like, you can get on the phone.
Well, I mean, I guess you could, but I think what people are dealing with too is, and I've wondered the same thing. Stephen A. Smith, you know, he commented about Megyn Kelly, who got on social media to, you know, right when the Black National Anthem was, you know, being sung during the Super Bowl, and then she jumps on and she tweets that out, and I guess
So
he's
dumb.
sort of like, you know, could we not just, could you not even just try to understand?
Sure.
Um, could maybe you just find a way to stomach it?
Yeah.
And then you've got, he said black people have been stomaching a lot of things. And again, I'm gonna get to that in a moment. But I think when you got Pastor Darrell Scott, you've got some of these others, Sonny Johnson, who's saying things. I think there are people who are feeling like you're not only are your comments over the top and ridiculous, but you're a hindrance to the movement that is taking place. Now, you're saying that you think that Donald Trump can stand on his own and he can see past that. But listen, I already believe in the principles of conservatism, and they getting on my nerves.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm imagining people who are
Sure.
outside the tent
Yeah.
trying to come in, and I just think there's such friction. I feel, Jerome, that we have gone so far backwards. There's such a division.
Interesting. It's two different things. I think in my mind, it's two different things, right? Like if you're that middle class Black family that again remembers, I mean, I just remember researching my book on Trump's presidency, and it was Pew Research. I asked the question for 50 years, how do you view your life? 90%, highest ever, said positively. I think the number was at 48 or something like that just a few weeks ago under Biden. It's like if you are that white, Black, Hispanic family and you find yourself struggling, and as soon as you catch a break, you get your kids into the school you wanted them to get into, the damn inflation report comes out and you realize you got to pay more for eggs and bacon again. And gas just went up 40 damn cents in this county. I don't even know why. Um, like the squabbles that are happening over here, even if both people we want to concede have good points on both sides, I just feel like it's just becoming harder and harder day to day for people to thrive.
True.
And the
Yeah.
closer that people get to feeling like it's hard for them to survive, like Donald Trump is just always been a no nonsense, cut through the crazy
Mhm.
beacon, like magnet for people. Again, like the energy being spent bickering
Right. Right.
over a 100-year-old song that meant a lot to a lot of people for a very good reason for generations. The NFL wants to do it. I mean, the NFL, multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it moves like a multi-billion-dollar corporation that is about world expansion. So, like I would like us to have one country, one anthem. I'm just that type of person. I don't know if at the end of the day though, like it really matters to most
Mhm.
people, or if when people go into the voting booth on November 8th, like if they'll remember what Stephen A. Smith said in response to what Megyn Kelly said,
Mhm.
about what I mean? In the moment, like it's awfully embarrassing. It's definitely not a good look.
Mhm.
And that's what I guess confuses and pisses me off about it. It's like, what are we doing? But again, I go back to like we've had it so good in this country despite the evils of the Democratic Party. We've had it so good in this country that this is how our political discourse exists. Like we just attack great men, imperfect men, but great men who
Right.
did great things to advance the cause of freedom in this country. It's just like, Black History Month could exist, it could not exist. But those same people who Donald Trump is making promises to, like he's trying to fight for them, right?
Right.
Like I would like for us to just be at a place where we could truly be colorblind and acknowledge great things that happened, and these are the people that did it, and
And
these are
see,
the circumstances that they did it under.
right.
But I don't
See,
know if we're
this is
like,
where we differ too, because I
yeah,
listened back to our conversation 8 years ago, and I didn't disagree with you at the time. But the more I think about it, I'm not interested in a colorblind society.
yeah,
I mean, I think I think what Dr. King said for Kirk, who was saying, well, this is what Dr. King wanted. And he said, I want to live, I want my children to live in a world where they're not judged by the color of their skin.
sure,
Now, but I think there's beauty in acknowledging differences. God created us that way.
yeah,
And so colorblind in terms of, who gets what
yeah,
benefit,
yeah,
colorblind, but I'm really not interested in a colorblind society. And for that reason, I don't have a problem with Black History Month.
yeah.
Um, I mean, if I choose not to celebrate it, that's me. But I don't have a problem with somebody else do what
Yeah.
you do, you
I
know.
guess I guess like I don't think we disagree much at all. Like I don't like to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Mhm.
And when I say that, or when people say Happy Valentine's Day and they catch me making a face, they're like, "Oh, you don't want to celebrate it?" And I'm like, "Well, I just don't know if there should be a day dedicated, you know, specifically to love. It does sort of diminish the other 364 days. I don't
See,
know
I
how.
think it enhances it.
Well, see, I guess that's where we disagree. Like
Yeah.
I don't, because we got a month. It's just I don't know. Like I don't know if I care that much.
I hear
You
you.
know what I mean? Because for years, like I've just volunteered, and I just so happen to mentor, if you will, a lot of young Black boys. You know what I mean? And so I talk about this history, but there's so much of it. I just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's too much. Black history is too much for 1 month, but I look at it this way. I'm a Christian.
Right.
I don't wait till December 25th to celebrate Christ, but that doesn't mean I can't
Well, some
celebrate.
people do
Well,
though.
no, I mean, some people do. And the same thing with Black history, I guess. So some
Yeah.
would say a little bit is better than none at all, right?
Right.
But ultimately, even as if you have a child, you celebrate their birth, you celebrate them all year, but you can also celebrate their birthday. It's okay. And so I
Sure.
guess I'm thinking conservatives, especially white conservatives with a platform, I'm thinking this: if you don't like it, if you don't understand the need for it, then just keep it
I,
moving.
I guess like if I was to write a history curriculum, and I would probably focus then on, I just make it'd be very educational. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I don't know what day it was, but in 1944, the Supreme Court ruled that the Democratic Party could no longer have white-only primaries,
Mhm.
right? And so the February 1st, that would be the lesson, right? It was like, here's what the Democratic Party was doing. If you were not white, you couldn't run for office
Mhm.
in that racist ass party. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's like, maybe, see, I know so much about history. I've been very unimpressed with like the infomercials, and I think I watch Fox Sports, and they'll like celebrate somebody, and every now and then it'll be a person who did something amazing despite horrific environment that I'd never heard of before. But
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
Like it's just like,
you're
why
well.
Martin Luther King Jr.? Why Booker T. Washington? Is like my Mount Rushmore. I mean, MLK barely makes it in. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Douglas, Booker T. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
No.
but I'm also leaving somebody off. I don't know.
Absolutely. I guess my point being, if I'm looking at it from, I mean, I can have my personal opinion about what they think, But I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm looking at it from a politically advantageous position, I gotta wonder about these people, like you said, who have so much that we could be talking about. And I'm not saying they don't deal with other things, because they do, but that they would take this time
Yeah.
and then they sort of come across as people who are speaking on behalf of Trump about so many things.
Sure.
From what Trump has done, which I'm going to get to, because you mentioned your book, one of your books in particular, but I'm thinking Trump is not going along with what you guys are saying. He,
He's
he's
like the
not.
ultimate big tent president. Like,
Okay, yeah. He's not going to be saying, he's very close to Alveda King. He's
yeah,
not going to be dogging Martin Luther King. He's not going to be dogging Black History Month. He might be saying, why don't y'all just be quiet? Because we're trying to win elections here. We're not.
it's just lame. It's just
Yeah,
lame. I mean, I
yeah.
had a conversation about Sonny Johnson going after Charlie Kirk,
Mhm.
and and I looked at it, and I'm just like, again, we are running out of time,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and maybe we've already run out of exits, right? Like maybe we've reached the tipping point. But I mean, the opportunity, like Charlemagne the God calls Donald Trump a threat to democracy, but
Mm.
that dude with he's a co-host of the #1 urban radio program in America. TV shows, hosting stuff. Him also calling Biden uninspiring,
Mhm.
and and not really having done much that he could point to specifically to
Yeah.
improve the lives of Black people who voted for him.
Mhm.
Even after Joe Biden insulted them, saying that if you don't vote for me, then you're not Black. I mean, Charlemagne the God having that voice,
Mm.
and seemingly, having a more constructive criticism of Joe Biden and Democrats. I mean, that's what the takeaway should be. Like, I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand why these personalities with these massive platforms who happen to be white boys are doing this. Like, it's not savvy. It's pretty lame.
Yeah.
And the personal stuff is just like, what are we doing? We don't have time for this shit, man. Like, these
You know,
people are crazy and they're on
it's
the
it's
rampage.
mildly it's mildly entertaining, for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the Super Bowl, though, I think I heard you say that you're in favor of, obviously, one anthem, one national anthem. I wanted to share, and maybe this is majoring on minors here, but
Yeah.
it goes along with what we're talking about. Um, you're part of Project 21.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit, before I read a few things from ambassadors of Project 21. Tell us a little bit about what that
But
is.
no, the National Center has this project. It's Black conservatives all across the country. We're usually authors, journalists, public speakers, radio hosts,
Mhm.
and we're just a network of Black conservatives. And whenever there is a political issue hotly debated,
Mhm.
particularly if it's our expertise, then we'll be called upon to argue the conservative cause.
Mhm.
Uh, it's it's been a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people through it, and I think we've actually helped advance the ideas, particularly around this climate change push
Mhm.
disproportionately hurts Black people, energy costs, you name it. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, 2 days before the Super Bowl, uh, I see three members here on the website for Project 21. They weighed in on the whole Black National Anthem
yeah,
debate. And so I just want to,
debate over the Black man,
yeah, I want to take a look
yeah,
at, okay, so here we go. It was on February 9th, and the Super Bowl was on the 11th. So Black conservatives, Lift Every Voice and Sing should never replace the national anthem. But here we have someone named Michael Austin, an ambassador, and he said, Lift Every Voice and Sing once served as a reminder to former slaves to show gratitude and faith to God for their freedom. But its inclusion in the Super Bowl 120 years later is less of a strategic move and more of a desperate Hail Mary to exploitation. The NFL is shamelessly following the leftist playbook, shaming Americans for crimes they didn't commit and victimizing Americans for injustices they never suffered. It's a divisive play where the only trophy hoisted will be an award of resentment and division instead of a celebration of America and a thrilling game we deserve to see. I'm going to ask you in a moment to weigh in on all this. Then you have AK, forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, Kamara. The NFL has once again bowed to the pressure of Marxist racial identitarians. The Black National Anthem will be performed by Andra Day during the Super Bowl 58 pregame broadcast. Lift Every Voice and Sing is a spiritually deep and powerful hymnal song. Full stop. It is not the Black National Anthem. Nations have national anthems, whereas ethnic and racial groups do not. Performing this song as the Black National Anthem destroys the true beauty, meaning, and power of the song. The Black National Anthem narrative foments racial divides and animosity. Maybe every person opposed to this divisive racial narrative should start taking the knee anytime Lift Every Voice and Sing is performed under the banner of the Black National Anthem. Now, that's not a half bad idea. And then Marquita Bushrod said, as long as the intent is pure, I am all for the NFL's decision to have the hymn Lift Every Voice and Sing, also known as the Black National Anthem, be sung at the Super Bowl. While no anthem can or should ever replace the national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing is an important song in the history of Black Americans that is a prayer to God of thanksgiving and freedom. The song is not performed during the game, nor is it replacing the national anthem. Rather, it will be sung during the pregame, which is appropriate during Black History Month. The national anthem will still have its rightful place immediately prior to kickoff, which is customary. For this reason, I see no issue with the song being performed. America needs all the prayers it can get as we are fighting for our freedom every day. Bringing this song to the NFL's biggest game of the year is a win-win in my book. So here you have two people who are saying, let it roll, let it go, go for it, and one who feels strongly otherwise. So either you will tie this thing here or you will tip it even more. What say you?
I agree with them both. That's the worst answer ever. No, Marquita's right, but the problem is that, and I touched on this earlier, the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation. They don't. I'm sure people work in New York City, in their headquarters, care about the history of America and why that song was written and why it was dedicated and what it actually meant 100 years ago. But most people who are hearing that song probably didn't go to church, or if they did go to church, perhaps their churches didn't sing it. And so maybe, I'm just saying, a lot of people weren't actually exposed to the rich and beautiful history of the song. The first time they actually get a whiff of the context around it is in response to it, because people are calling it the Black National Anthem. And if you're Black and you say served in the military, or you swore an oath as a police officer in your community, you hear Black National Anthem and it's like, damn, I'm just trying to rise the ranks of the military or in my police force. And like, I don't even really need all these damn reminders about me being Black and my Blackness and the history of Blacks and stuff. It's like, but and that could just be lazy colloquialism and stuff like that. But that's kind of my main point. Is like, our discourse is so dumbed down, is that we can't have both, not responsibly. We can't have, lift every voice and sing, be sung, and it just be incredibly moving and spiritual as it was always intended. And we do that sort of in a prudent and accountable way, and that be it. We have to pick at the scabs that the left left us with in the form of scars, because that's how it went.
Did you grow up singing this song?
In my church, Second Arnold Baptist Church. Yeah.
Okay, so
and I mean, like we got the lyrics and we got the history of it.
Okay.
No.
Now I did a video after this because after all the hoopla a few days ago. And this is what surprises me. Now, I made it clear. I do not, we have one national anthem.
Yeah.
I am not in favor of this being sung at these, where it's customary to sing the national anthem.
But
However, this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, where have these people been? There are literally people who act like, and they haven't, like they've never heard the song before, like someone just sung the song. I said, these songs are sung in churches, at events, at graduations. I sang it my first year teaching to my students, white and black. They loved it. The words are absolutely beautiful. Yeah. It is about overcoming. It's about having overcome. It's beautiful. So I said, you know what? For those of you who don't do your homework, here are the words. And I mean all of them.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our paths through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
And I'm just thinking, well, where have you people been? This is my take, Jerome, and you can tell me I'm wrong. I don't think most of America sits around consuming news and politics like we do.
Thankfully.
So for many of them, they're not there. I've never looked at this song, even though we called it the Negro National Anthem, now the Black National. I never looked at this song as replacing the national anthem. It was every voice is saying, here's the Negro National Anthem. You hear it all over the place. Most Americans, they're not looking at this at the game as replacing anything.
Sure.
All they know is I sing it here, I sing it here. Here's another place we're singing the song.
Yeah.
And yet we're using
it's just the NFL became highly politicized the last time in 2016 with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the Star Spangled Banner. And so that was less than a decade ago, you know, and sports have always been a vehicle for advancing one political agenda or movement or another. And that in the backdrop of that, you know, we've had the George Floyd riots, we've had Black Lives Matter. And if you were against that, then you were automatically racist without question, you know? And so that's what I'm saying. Like we can't really have a duality, not the entire body politic, you know, it's
will
got
we get back to that point? Will we ever be able? Not with Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh doing the stuff they're doing. I don't see it.
That may not help. That may not help.
I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't want this at the national at a sporting event either.
Yeah.
And I think in part is because they don't really care about Black people.
You have. I don't know how large the viewership, the people who just show up to watch the game, who don't care about any of the preamble, including the Star Spangled Banner, the flying of the flag. Like there are people who just want to watch the baseball game, just want to watch the football game, the hockey match, the soccer game, and they don't care about any of it. And so, you know, if they see this big debate on the rise, you know, if they chime in, it's because they're pissed that they have to see anything at all. Black, Negro,
let's play ball, right?
Whatever.
They just want to play ball.
Well, I gotta say, boy, that stance is very tantalizing. Every day is just like it's a good country. It would be a lot better if fewer Democrats were in elected office.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything else would
Well, so speaking of that, though, somebody might want to say something to Representative Matt Gaetz, who found it necessary to put out that he was not going to. He told his wife, "We are not watching the Super Bowl this year because they are going to be performing."
Do we think Matt Gaetz was going to watch the Super Bowl anyway?
Well, yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not at all. But anyway, let's get back to Trump, because you did write. You wrote one book that's called 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know. I've already shared that with the audience. And then you wrote 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know About Trump.
Yeah.
And we talked about Trump already, but I want you to just give us a couple things that they don't want. Who's they, first of all? What are just a couple things, and then why don't they want us to know? They.
They are definitely the people who control any form of lever of power that puts them in the majority, right? So, you know, the overwhelming majority of the decision makers in the entertainment business, whether it's film and television, country, rap, rock, they tend to be liberals, and they tend, if they vote, to vote for Democrats. The same could be said with people who start and then grow what eventually become large tech companies. The same could be said in media. The leaders of ABC, NBC, Universal, you know, ESPN, Disney, they tend to be liberal. They tend to support Democratic Party politicians and policies. In my Trump book, my first book sold a lot of books.
Mhm.
And my editor and all of his bosses were very happy, as
Mhm.
was I. And I was shocked and surprised. And so my editor said, "Do you think you can do another one of these about Trump?"
Mhm.
And I said, "I'm not sure," because Trump had just finished 2 years of his term. And
Mhm.
so I was researching the 50 things they don't want you to know about Trump during his third year and into his fourth. And it turned out to be great. I learned so much, and people tell me all the time. I literally had students at the YAF conference in Orlando. One in particular came up to me with the Trump book, all marked up and
Yeah.
footnotes, and it was incredible. I mean, I touched on the 10-year funding package that Donald Trump signed with about 100 of the HBCU presidents in the Oval Office. And the biggest story out of that was Kellyanne Conway putting her feet up on the couch. That's how
Yeah.
the media reported
Yeah.
on this monumentous historical thing that no other president had done for Black colleges and universities before Trump did it. Um, I talked about, I don't even remember what chapter it is. It's an economic chapter, but I was talking about, how so many new firms started under Trump. And, it just belied all of the vicious smears. So
Mhm.
many people said that if he was elected, the stock market would crash. It did nothing of the sort. In fact, it did the exact opposite. But his economic policies benefited Black women who vote the least for Republicans, and certainly for Donald Trump. It benefited them the most if they were starting a new business in 2018 and 2019. I mean, Donald Trump brought peace to the Middle East largely through the Abraham Accords, and it was one of those things where, like, we're around the same age. Like, I just remember growing up, that phrase "peace in the Middle East" being
Yeah.
ubiquitous on
Yeah.
nightly news. And here you have a man, shepherding agreements between Arab countries and Israel. And,
Yeah.
Breitbart was the biggest media outlet reporting on it. Um, you know, the
So
world.
who's taking copies of these books and handing them out in these
Well,
communities?
people do people do
You
tell me,
know?
because when it came out, so both books came out paperback, so they were relatively cheap.
Yeah.
And people still tweet photos of, just like, they don't buy one, they buy five.
Good. Yeah.
But it's aging well, and I really, really do appreciate you mentioning it and promoting it, because it was not me on an island just writing a book. I leaned on a lot of our
Oh yeah.
colleagues at Breitbart
Mhm.
for their expertise and their brilliance in a lot of fields, especially the Trump book, because I keep an ear to politics because I cover the intersection of entertainment and politics, but I don't really know what's happening on the ground in India or China or London,
Right.
like Francis Martell or John Hayward
Yes.
do, for
Yeah.
example. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah.
that's good. Now, another one coming?
I've been working on a third one
Okay.
for a little while.
Mhm.
I've got, it's 50 things. I've got about 30 of them.
Okay.
Um, and early reaction is quite off the charts.
Good. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a blessing,
Mhm.
very grueling.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I like to be the sunlight
Mhm.
in being the best disinfectant. And there's just so much stuff out there that I think is intentionally hidden
Mhm.
from people. And I like giving people the feeling that I got when I realized so much about
Yeah.
the history of this great country that I had not been turned on to. So
Good.
it's what drives me, all the long nights and the missed
Yeah.
meals and the
Yeah. Yeah.
missed
Oh,
sleep.
good. As we wrap up, though, I'd like to ask you for a prediction.
Okay,
2024.
fun.
What do you put on your, I don't know, under that hat? And it must
Of all
be,
the, like, Of
Your
all
hat.
the radio, like I hosted Breitbart News Daily Thursday and Friday. I
Mhm.
get callers, right? I
Mhm.
just I did a Q&A for like 40 minutes a week ago. No one ever asked me for like this. I'm never put on the spot, and I'm always amazed how I dodged questions when I
Uh-huh.
have to go on the record publicly.
Yeah,
Um,
prognosticator's hat. You're wearing it.
so it doesn't look good on me. So Trump or Biden? Um, I
I mean,
mean,
we're assuming Trump's going to be the nominee, right?
well, yeah, he'll be the nominee. So will Biden, even after the DNC convention in Chicago.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Trump wins, and I don't know if it's gonna be close.
Mhm.
And in fact, I think he'll repeat 16, where like I don't know if he'll win Wisconsin
Mhm.
in November, but I think he wins the rest of the Rust Belt,
Mhm.
Michigan, Pennsylvania. I think he actually wins Virginia.
Mhm.
Um, but so I think when the dust settles, it'll be. I'm not saying people will say blowout,
Mhm.
but given that the left is already. I mean, he's fighting in 4 different courts.
Yeah.
Um, given all of the fighting that he will have to do,
Mhm.
um, I think it'll be kind of impressive in that context.
Mhm. Well, we certainly will see how that shakes out. I mean, I
Don't
know.
share this episode with
No,
anyone.
I don't share the
Cut
listen
this
this
part out.
part, right? Cut this part. Well, he's got so much coming at him. God
Yeah.
bless him for being willing to stand and fight after they're trying to bankrupt him and the lawfare that's going on. All right, Jerome, I appreciate you. You're such a wealth of personality as well as insight, and you've done so much. And I want people to be able to keep up with you. So give us the full gamut there. How can people follow Jerome Hudson?
At Jerome E. Hudson. That's both my Twitter and my Instagram. And just really the best way to get in contact with me, especially Instagram, because people DM me all the time. It's fun. I love it.
Mhm.
And this was fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I want to make sure that I put your book links in the show notes as well,
Okay.
and where they can follow your writing on Breitbart as well, Mr. Entertainer.
I don't really write that much, which is always sort of a demon that I wrestle with. But
Yeah. Well, you're writing books, so
well, I have a lot to say, so I'm gonna
yes. Well,
be doing
uh,
more.
I'm glad you do because that gave you perfect opportunity to be here on the show, so you could say it right
Yeah,
here. All right, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. God bless you.
thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to speak with Jerome Hudson, entertainment editor at Breitbart News Network. But as you can see, his experience is far and wide. And I will be putting in the show notes information where you can follow him, where you can check out his books. And so be sure to look for that as well. Now, as we wrap up, I have to remind you to go to my Substack. That's adrienneross.substack.com, where you can follow my writing and where you can also check out my podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and make sure you get notifications for when something drops. And then also be sure that you share with other people, like, comment, all the good stuff. You can do that as well over on Substack. And then you can also subscribe on podcast platforms. Also, be sure to go to the BMG Network. That is the bmgnetwork.com, and check out the other podcasters there. We are engaging, enlightening, informative, and yes, entertaining. I appreciate your support. God bless you, Amanda.